like your credits went through just fine. Fantastic. Now, where was I? Right. You were asking about the mercs, Nox Solaris. Well, friend, you have come to the right man. Been their humble street pharmacist since just after they got together. Some of my best clients, by the way. But more importantly for you, they're the best there is at what they do. I mean, what a group. Leader's a bona fide Atlantean voyager. That's right, Atlantean. Then there's the spooky techno-wizard cyborg genius. Finally, a mystic smithy giant. 12 feet tall if he's an inch. Not to mention the mountain of a spirit bear he calls brother. Now, I can get word to him if you're looking to hire Mister. No problem there. Just let old Blitz give you 2 tiny tips for your health. First, don't get on their bad side. Make sure you have payment ready to go, and don't try to pull any bullshit, or you're worse than dead. And second, don't piss off that fucking bear.
Finally, there you are. The Nexus had just enough power to fuel one more try. The last step. The Megaverse knows my Atlantean people as heroes, but a shadow of chaos has taken root in me. They try to bind it. They try to bury it. But when I finally called out to it, to you, from across the void, you answered, I am ready.
Welcome, traveler, to the Black Shore.
Your shame reaches a mother's heart, even beyond the veil, little brother. My sister saw and mocked her as the darkness closed in. She giggled and synthesized honey-sweet tones while leaning close to softly breathe her venom into my ear. And so, with judgment passed and tourniquets in place, my family commanded the automated surgical bots to neatly slice both arms and legs from my torso. The harsh lights overhead swam and dimmed before my eyes, as flesh and bone were replaced with cold, unfeeling metal to cripple my connection to the arcane. Now, my family lies far behind my path, and I follow a new teacher as she whispers from the darkness ahead. Her voice haunts me with promises of forbidden knowledge and wonders precious beyond compare. Each step brings me closer to my prize, closer to my revenge, closer to her.
Nah, brother. My eyes read the stars as keenly as your ancient ones do. It is almost here. E is almost home. And with him comes the end for our proud and noble Vana countryman, along with the rest of the souls on this world. As his foul shadow falls upon us all, we alone stand for those who cannot. Ugh. So rise, son of Aku. Our ancestors smile upon us this night as they call us home. Come and let us earn our place amongst the stars above.
All right, everybody, we are back with our Prism of KeterFall campaign. We are joined once again by Akama, Ren, and Ymir. We're going to jump right into it today. They find themselves inside of the mysterious and mystical wandering aristocrat. And now that they've actually gained entrance, they are in the area known as the Berg. As they entered this area, they quickly moved from a rather dilapidated zone into something that's populated by what seems to be lots of rather elegant businesses, restaurants, inns, all kinds of different shop fronts that seem to have a fairly medieval kind of look to them. This particular area of the aristocrat seems to be geared more for commerce and tourism, with an eye towards perhaps exotic or expensive rare goods. Already, Ymir has made contact with Lars, who works for a local blacksmith establishment and has been requested to participate in some work for hire later on for his blacksmith boss. Let's see. Okay, so as we catch back up, I believe Ren had just seen something very interesting in a shop window about an item that caught his eye. And Akama, where had we left off with you? I thought you were... Oh, you were looking into the kind of herb and potion shop, right? Okay, and as you were looking in, you had seen the flower,
And he
correct?
just passed off the silver dagger to me. I believe that's where we left off last. I made
Correct.
sure to retrieve the
Yeah,
silver
so
dagger.
I left you and I just went on a walk, and I was looking to acquire a beverage. So I saw like a garden-like shop that was selling tea, and as I was walking by, I saw in the window this crazy-looking flower.
Excellent. So that was the shop. And again, this is the flower that he had seen. Definitely looked very mystical and was in a very intricate kind of case. All right.
Nothing came up if you showed it off.
Yeah, I saw that picture.
Oh, I was just making
Okay.
sure the audience
Okay.
caught up. So, okay, so now that we are caught up, Ymir, you had just made contact with Lars, and then you had returned to your group and explained that you were going to have some work later on to attend to. And I believe that's right where we had left things with you, correct?
Indeed, yes. I just retrieved Akama's silver dagger and added it to my pack for the project that I'm going to be working on shortly.
Excellent. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and pick up with Ren? You had just approached the open door of this shop and seen on the electronic kind of marquee outside a sign that a portable nanoforge was for sale. So looking into that shop and seeing that, it definitely kind of catches your attention. As you look around, you see that the individual that seems to be behind the register, kind of tending shop, is a just rather benign looking, gruesomely faced, but rather benign looking individual. His eyes glow a pale green, and you definitely see that he is watching each and every customer that is flowing in and out of the front door with a kind of wolfish stare, obviously ready to pounce on any suspected thieves or troublemakers. You also see that the thing to his left seems to lean its head over towards the glass, almost in a pantomime of whispering things to the individual behind the counter every few minutes or so. He seems to cock his head over to it as if listening carefully, and then returns to his former posture. Okay, as you look around, there's several other shops that you can check out as well. I want to remind you that you're in your rail, and you haven't found any place to park it yet. As you look around, you do see that there is a vehicle depot off to the right. It seems like it's attached to the area that you saw all of the military defense vehicles earlier. And it looks like an area that you could store your vehicle if you wish, but you also see that there are lots of signs advertising different weapon systems, armor upgrades, drivetrain upgrades, and so forth that are available for purchase. So if you're interested, it seems like there's some services you could have done to it as well. All right, so what would you like to do?
I'll approach, obviously, the depot, because there's not much I can do if I'm stuck inside my vehicle this entire time. So I'll go up and look to see if there's like docking fees, or not docking, but parking fees or whatever it may be.
As you pull up, you see that a valet kind of steps out in just a mechanic's uniform, but very clean and well kept. Human in origin, male. He looks down at you from his vantage point and kind of nods and asks, "What can he do? What can he do to help today?" As you look around, you see some of the signage that's printed in a few different languages, lets you know that there's no fees for docking a vehicle, and that the vehicle's security and safety is guaranteed while in their care. but not under your stewardship while on the premises of the aristocrat. So essentially, as long as it's docked, you're guaranteed to, be covered. And there is no fee whatsoever. As you look around, you do see that some of the weapons upgrade costs are fairly reasonable. There's a few different systems that run in the neighborhood of 50 to 100,000 credits, and they actually look relatively sophisticated from your knowledge of these things. So other than that, there's pretty much any kind of mundane cosmetic upgrade you would want, although you can tell there's really nothing in the way of like adding things like really enhanced portable sensors, or sophisticated like scientific equipment or anything like that. But if you want it painted a certain color, you want a certain kind of speaker set up, you want a coffee maker, all that kind of shit they can do.
Gotcha. For the time being, I'm just gonna park it because there's a whole lot of stuff here, and I've got a limited amount of credits to see what I can do with. So before I jump ahead and start spending stuff where I might need or want to spend elsewhere, I'm just gonna leave it docked at the moment.
Okay, the valet takes your, we'll just say, a fob, and you set the kind of security system that you have so that it can only be moved basically with the code that you input. They take it away, everything goes completely smoothly, and you see it get loaded into a kind of storage container like boxy shell that's on almost like a conveyor belt from above. And once it gets pulled up into the air, it kind of slides along like dry cleaning, and another comes out to replace it. All right, so as your vehicle disappears into storage, you turn back around and you're still really close to the store that you were in front of a moment ago. We're going to stay with you. What would you like to be doing now? Your group is kind of off to the left in the center of a kind of like square in the middle of all of this shit. And there's basically stores and shops ringing, both sides. And so essentially your group is about like 30 feet away to your left, and then the shop is about 15 feet to your right that you were just in front of. Like I said, though, lots of other stuff to look at and do if you'd like.
I'll leave the vehicle for now, and I will head back to the shop that piqued my interest, along with the quite interesting shopkeep with the interesting
slimy companion. All right, you head back over to that shop, and as you get over to that area, you really get a good look inside the door. And gazing around, go ahead and do a perception check if you would.
Sure. Real quick though, is this like this district, I guess you could say, is this very shop heavy, and is it very kind of like I'm trying to get like a visual, like is it like Blade Runner style, like just lots of like kiosks and tents and shops and like lit up, or is it just kind of more like
No, yeah, it's kind of provincial, I would say, where you're seeing, lots of open spaces and things like that. So
it's a little bit nicer, not so kind of.
No, only the very outskirt where you guys first came through the kind of blast doors had that kind of impoverished look to it. As soon as you kind of cleared that very outer layer, you were in what looks like a tourist town, like the areas of Disneyland where you find all the like food vendors and shit like that kind of shit.
Sure.
So.
Okay. You said roll a perception.
All right. As you're looking around this shop with your knowledge of magical lore and all things in the demesne of techno wizardry, you see right away that this appears to be a very rare kind of vendor indeed. It appears that this shop sells homunculi, and that all of these strange little figures lining the shelves and walls and ceiling appear to be kind of quasi-life forms that can be purchased and used as pets and friends and tools. You see that the different patrons of this shop look to be very, very well-to-do, and as you're looking around at the different kinds of decorations present, you're noticing, and just the quality of the work, you're realizing that this must be an incredibly high-end store that caters to like a very select clientele. You would not be surprised at all if all of these things were custom ordered by people for what would amount to be probably a small fortune. Now, what appears to be a much larger model off on the right that is encased in that large chunk of crystal, that one you can actually see is moving unlike any of the others. You would guess that they have to be activated before use, after purchase. This one appears like it already has that spark of kind of quasi-life instilling it with some kind of animation. It moves very slowly and haltingly, as though each motion is through a great deal of pressure and resistance, but it does appear to be rather uncomfortable, if such a thing is possible, for such a twisted being. All right, other than that...
What do I know about this type of magic? Like, I mean, it would have been only through reading or research as opposed to in person.
Excellent
do I know
question.
anything?
You know that this type of it's more of like a ritual rather than standard like incantation magic, and the ritual is almost always made of a blood sacrifice, where the energy of the creature that's sacrificed is basically trapped and bound in a crude way to some kind of puppet. And that it's usually very frowned upon because it's a almost barbaric and arcane form of what many people know as biowizardry, which is what makes the fabled and incredibly powerful rune weapons and objects. Rune weapons and objects are ones where the spirit of really powerful beings like angels, gods, dragon lords, all kinds of things like that are actually bound into an object, and so their power is just almost immeasurable in some ways. This is achieved usually by either a humanoid or some kind of higher animal life form, a more intelligent animal life form being used to just give it a really crude kind of rough life essence. But the process is supposed to make the spirit or energy very willing to serve and loyal and subservient to the owner. Okay, other than that, that's about what you know of the practice. You've never heard of something like this, a shop that actually sells these types of things.
Okay. But I do have experience of at least knowing of biowizardry.
Yes. Yeah, you know exactly what that is. You also know that the only ones that really practice that anymore are the Splugorth. They're known for it, so...
Yeah. I'm probably gonna, kind of, just play it just kind of like, look around really quickly, but like... Ren's fine with biomancy, obviously, but biowizardry, he's not really, that's not his cup of tea. He's not too keen on it.
It's definitely
obviously
dark.
I think it also kind of stems into what's happened to him being against his will, cutting a little close to home, and just being like,
sure,
I wouldn't really ever consider this if I was so offended by something that was done to me similar, but on even to an extent, a much lighter level. I lost things, but I wasn't controlled or taken over or completely ended.
Yeah.
So I will take a look and be like, oh, okay, that's what this is, and then probably fuck off and go to check out the see what this sale is about. This object that he had
Been
just
interested
recently
in?
heard about, that all of a sudden was right in front of his face.
Okay, as you step in a little bit, you notice that the shopkeep is eyeing you cautiously. As
Of
he
the
kind
place
of,
I was just at?
yeah, he's, yeah.
Okay.
And so he's eyeing you cautiously, and as you kind of look towards him to make an inquiry, he holds up a single finger pointing straight ahead of him, which is off to your right. And as you look over, you see that there is just a simple archway with a kind of stone staircase leading down off on the far wall in that direction.
As I'm kind of shuffling around and planning on leaving, he points me in a direction towards an archway with a stone stairs.
Yeah, as you're just looking around, he just kind of points back towards that. He doesn't say
And
anything.
This is that creepy, green-eyed, glowing kind of werewolf-looking motherfucker.
Correct.
Can I try to get a read on him? Can I figure out any intent, or just? I mean, is he just being kind of playfully devious, or is he?
You get no kind of sense that there's any kind of chicanery going on. He's just looking at you dead-eyed like he is, and just simply points in that direction, almost as if
Isn't
just
that restaurant with all the goofy shit in the walls and the chicken or the shenanigans? Oh, fuck it. We're in a new place. I'm not going to be completely closed-minded to something I've just read about, even though it's kind of turning my stomach. I will hesitantly and cautiously check out what he pointed me towards.
Okay. As you
Before Ren makes his move, Ymir calls out from outside the shop, "Master Ren, if you look to see if you still wish to watch my sacred art, I shall be across the road at the smithy."
Okay, and so you hear him say that, obviously.
I'll be over in a bit. Just checking out these weird jar things.
All right. So as you look over close to the door, or I'm sorry, to the archway.
I will say Ren was trying to come up with like an excuse of what he was doing, and basically came up with that terrible of excuse, being like, honey, brush your teeth. I will right after I finish masturbating. I mean, yeah. So
right.
he's just kind of like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'll be right there, but I'm kind of doing weird shit.
All right. So as you approach the archway,
Realizing he totally like, oh fuck, what, that was a stupid thing to say. Whatever. Just go.
you look down and you see a strange kind of workshop at the base of probably 10 wide stone stairs. The workshop looks really clean and orderly, and it also looks definitively to have the signs of a techno-wizard occupying its premises. You see a lot of the old staples that you rely on for your research and for your smithing, and essentially, right away you can tell that this place is made for somebody who has a lot of resources and is a very high level techno wage or enchanter of some kind. You hear a voice come out loud and crisp with a thick, almost Jamaican accent. And you hear somebody from down there around a corner bellow out, Come, we haven't got all day." And at that, we're going to switch over to Akama.
I feel like you're giving me the hot girl that's like really cool, loves dogs, all this shit, and then I find out she's a Trump supporter. I feel like that's what you're doing right now. I feel like, oh, this person's got all this shit you want, but they dip in the no-no magic. Fucker. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
All right, so Akama, as you're looking around this shop, you notice
Did I
that...
go in yet?
You're standing right in front of it. If you'd like to, you can definitely start heading in.
I'm gonna lick this window a little bit more. Jewel a little bit on this flower.
Okay.
And then I walk in.
All right, as you head in, you notice a couple of things right away. You see that in the far corner appears to be kind of the register and the main kind of checkout area where the merchant resides. This area is full of a wondrous assortment of potions and elixirs of all different kinds of stripe. Now, as you're looking around, just from your experience, you know that this is a pretty high-end kind of herbalist and potion shop. You can see that they appear to specialize in more kind of like recreational substances as well. And you would guess that most of the fairly common drugs, recreational drugs that you've come across in your travels are represented among these shelves as well. The other thing that you notice right away is that the proprietor looks like he is some kind of humanoid rat-like creature of extremely advanced age. He toils away at his workbench, seemingly crafting some new exotic and incredibly valuable creation for one of his clients. And as you enter, he kind of looks up at you, and from behind his spectacles, he just kind of nods once, kind of briskly, and turns right back to his work and continues on. While turned away from you, he says in a clear, resonant voice, come and look around. If anything interests you, simply inquire. I'd be happy to help. With this, you gaze around and a few different objects catch your attention. Most notably is that flower on prominent display behind the gilded large cage. But you also notice that there appears to be a nice kind of almost display section with a kind of like little forested background cutout where this bottle sits pretty prominently displayed. You see that there's a little purple overhead light set up for it and all of that kind of jazz where it looks like this is some kind of like truly specialty item. And then you also see that there's all kinds of liqueurs, spirits, all kinds of that kind of thing on display as well for purchase. All right, what would you like to do?
Hey, shopkeeper, I got a quick question. You happen to have any type of drinks by any chance? Maybe some tea that I can sip on while I look around a little bit more?
He looks over at you and you see that he pulls his spectacles down with one old gnarled hand, and he kind of looks at you with these beady little rat eyes for a few seconds, these red beady little eyes. And then he puts the spectacles back and he kind of goes, huh, Atlantean, eh?
I give him like a lift one eyebrow up, and I tilt my head slightly, and I said, yeah, so what's it to you?
He kind of grunts again and he goes, appreciate your service. Help yourself. And he nods over to a little table where you see what appears to be a very exotic and kind of personal favorite concoction of his apparently set up for his own personal use. You can tell that this is kind of separated from the main area of what he provides his customers, and it's almost like back next to his desk. And as he does so, he just kind of nods over to it, and you can tell he's offering you to take that cocktail and enjoy it. And he grunts one more time and says, "Try the brown fruit. Goes well with it." With this, he just turns right back and begins working again.
I go ahead and give him like a nice light bow. I said, "I appreciate you. I'll go ahead and sit down and enjoy this."
All right, you sit down on a kind of just rickety old wooden chair, plain as can be, that's sitting next to that table. And as you do so, it kind of creaks slightly under your weight. He's obviously pretty damn slender. And as you tip that back and start enjoying it, the beverage is incredibly refreshing. It definitely tastes like it has some kind of maybe magical component to it, because there's a few different weird kind of textures, and it at one point as you're sipping it, it begins fizzing kind of violently, but it's definitely enjoyable. And there's lots of different subtle notes that kind of play across in all of this kind of like symphony of flavor that you can tell isn't just from standard, chemical reactions of a normal drink. It definitely is really, really enjoyable. Probably one of the better cocktails you've ever had. And you find yourself kind of greedily going back for kind of sip after sip until it's just about gone.
Pardon my manners, shopkeeper. My name is Akama, and if you do, please let me know yours.
He just looks over at you briefly, and he says, "Bert." He says, "Pleased to meet you."
Bert, what a fantastic name. It goes well with this delicious liqueur. If you don't mind me asking, what kind of beverage this is?
He says in that same kind of rough voice, he says, "Doesn't have a name. It's my own concoction." He says, "By the way, welcome. This is Herbs. I'm the owner, Bert." He says, "I can give a discount to Champions of Light if you're interested." He says, "I do need to get back to work, so take a look around, and if there's anything I can help you with, you just let me know."
Aye, and I gave him kind of like a offhand salute, like, "Thank you."
Okay, and he nods to you very respectfully and gets right back to it.
I want to take a bite of that brown fruit.
Okay, as you take a bite of that, right away it reminds you of some of the smoothest, sweetest, like milk chocolate you've ever had, but it has a texture like rice that's been like toasted. So it's almost like what we would think of as like Cocoa Pebbles, only there's a little bit of kind of sticky, resinous kind of sap of some sweet nature that keeps it together, almost like caramel. So very, very tasty, and it definitely reminds you of almost like like an actual like confection or some kind of candy. So goes really, really well with the drink. And yeah, you quickly finish off the drink and a couple of those little treats. As you're looking around, you notice that there is pretty much a full selection of potions and elixirs available. So you can kind of do a little shopping if you'd like to. From your travels that potions are extremely helpful and usually pretty much a requirement anytime people are going to be out adventuring pretty, seriously. It's a great way to mitigate danger, so, and give your group, advantages. So anyway, anything that you are interested in looking at, as you look around, you see things, made for healing, for offensive purposes, things that can make individuals grow to tremendous size for short periods of time, things that can speed people up, things that can poison, even supernatural things. All kinds of different shits represented as you're just kind of starting to kind of peruse around. So, all right, and then let's switch over to Ymir. As you're watching your friends kind of start exploring some of the different shops and things available, you glance over and you notice that Geiger has stayed standing relatively close to you and Wotek. And Geiger appears to be kind of uncomfortable in this setting with all of these people walking around. You don't really notice anything about her form right now that suggests that she's comfortable. You notice that she continually kind of is circling around towards the rear of your kind of group, the two of you, almost trying to put you guys in between her and kind of the crowds around you. Does that make sense?
So she's essentially trying to hide behind the girth of Ymir and Wotek, is what you're saying? Like,
I mean, I don't know why you got to bring the word girth into it, but yes.
I was gonna
yes,
say,
indeed.
can you say that again? I didn't hear
I
that.
mean, it's
I get you. Yes, indeed.
One more time.
well, noticing this, Ymir, as he's starting to make his way across the street back towards Lars, he kind of grumbles underneath his breath, but still inquiring, uncomfortable around common folk, huh?
Okay, and she looks over at you and with that strange kind of reflective faceplate, just kind of nods under the large kind of old tarp that she's wearing as a really simple, oversized kind of robe covering. She just nods a single time to you, and as she does so, in the darkness behind her head, you can see those strange spines along her back kind of twitch underneath the material of the tarp, giving it this weird kind of eerie, parasitic look. As she does so, she kind of turns away a little bit after she nods, almost reinforcing her statement.
Ymir just sort of chuckles to break the kind of uncomfortableness between the two of them and goes, that makes two of us. Because given his size, he always sticks out amongst anyone, especially amongst these common people with where the buildings are only built 3 stories high is the tallest you would see because of the mandates or whatever. He's very used to sticking out like a sore thumb in everything, and sort of just chuckles to himself as him and Wotek start to make their way back over to Lars's shop. Now, as he does, he leans over to Wotek and goes, "Keep your nose and your ears up, brother, for our companions. Though peaceful and sleepy this place may seem on the surface, we've yet to find what kind of dirt it has underneath its fingernails."
Okay, and at this, he kind of lets out a loud snort, and he kind of looks over towards Geiger, and kind of, for just barely audibly, produces just something very thin, like a high-pitched kind of whine. Very, very thin and kind of reedy, and just a split second. But it makes you gaze back up at her, and you see now that she actually seems to be kind of shivering just a little bit. You see just those kind of little bit of involuntary motions kind of going across her frame every few seconds. And it definitely raises an eyebrow. Wotek kind of looks up at you and has a look on his face that denotes definitely some kind of like concern. But also uncertainty, okay? All right, and again, you guys are kind of standing back from the crowd, still really close to where you first would have come into this little plaza area. I want to make sure that makes sense. You're not like really in the middle of everybody or anything, okay? All right. What would you like to do, Ymir?
Well, Ymir is going to definitely keep one eye as he continues to step, just in case there's some sort of reaction, because clearly once Wotek reacts, he's on it, so his instincts are immediately heightened. A hair may stand up on his arm, which is clearly noticeable as he watches Geiger closely as they continue to make their way towards Lars's shop.
Okay. Geiger does continue rotating with you over towards the shop. As you approach, you see that Lars is no longer standing outside. The storefront that you see that's kind of open in front is this image, where there's a few kind of warrior types all around, probably just having their daily, their morning BS session. All the locals and, shopkeepers and stuff having some coffee and just kind of getting started with the day's chores. Looks like a couple of relatively common humans, are running the actual storefront here. You do notice, however, that there's a large kind of fortified entrance to what looks like it would probably be like the main kind of forge area for this facility. Again, when you encountered Lars earlier, he was out at the kind of like side, the more kind of like a hobby kind of area, or maybe one that they loan out to people, or where you would just do a really quick job and you don't necessarily have to keep everything perfectly clean or whatever.
Right.
But for the actual storefront itself, they are supplied by a full-on, really sophisticated facility that you cannot see into, but you would guess that it could probably crank out 5 or 6 smiths really turning out high production quickly. So this is probably something that they do quite a bit of volume through this business, okay? Wait 1 second. Okay, as you look up, for the first time you see the marquee and it says Kroger's Arms, okay? You notice that there are no prices listed for any of the wares in the storefront that you can see, but there are lots of different weapon types and gear types represented, and you would probably be able to find most, normal kinds of bladed weapons, as well as they've got, quite a large selection of adventurers' gears, tents, flares, all the staples that you could think of, including some fairly, advanced technology versions of some of those staples. Let's see. Beyond that, you essentially can move into the storefront, or up to the kind of counter, or go back over to the left-hand side where you had first, met with Lars, but again, you haven't seen him since you guys talked a moment ago. He did say he was going to go confer with his boss about the job.
He was around back of the side, and Ymir is looking for Lars in particular. So, I'm going to walk in and strike up a conversation with the shopkeep, whoever's behind the counter. Ymir says, "Hello, fellow smith. My name is Ymir. I'm looking for a fellow smith that resides here. His name is Lars. Is he around?"
Yeah, the clerk looks up at you, kind of stunned a little bit by your obvious, your 12-foot stature. You probably are a fairly rare kind of sight, even in this very prolific kind of shopping district. But as he stares up at you and he kind of catches his breath after just a second, he stammers out, "1 second, good sir." He turns around and quickly retreats back behind the wall. You hear a door open and then close somewhere around the rear of the building. And the moments kind of stretch on for just a bit as you wait. You do see that Geiger has now walked over and appears to be actually leaning against Wotek. And you see that Geiger appears to be kind of breathing rather heavily and leaning fairly heavily against the flank of Wotek. Wotek is just like looking up at you, very calm and not in a defensive kind of posture, but he looks concerned. Okay? Is that tracking? Like, he doesn't look like he's worried that there's a threat, but he does seem like whatever's happening with her is something that, for whatever reason, he's taking seriously, almost almost protectively. Okay. All right, so you're waiting for Lars to come out. We're gonna jump on over. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in reaction to this, Ymir, as Lars is making his way out the back, is actually going to start making his way over to Geiger and Wotek, and we can pick it up from there. My bad.
Oh, no worries at all, man. All right, so now we're gonna jump back over to Ren. As you hear that voice call out, you continue looking around this shop, and from an alcove on the right-hand wall, obviously some kind of like little, alternate room, you see this individual step forward. He has a long, extremely luxurious and opulent kind of almost like a hand towel, a monogrammed hand towel of deepest kind of crimson and gold, and he's wiping his hands as though he had just washed them and is simply tidying up. But he wipes his hands with this hand towel and then very gently and elegantly folds it up and lays it casually over the back of a chair that is located nearby. As he does so, both of his hands come together kind of almost in a kind of kneading motion, and you realize right away he's put just a little bit of some kind of lotion into his hands and is just simply rubbing them in. You notice all of this because he definitely is one of the most I don't know if stylish is the word, but definitely one of the most kind of regal-looking individuals that you've seen so far in the Aristocrat. And the air that he presents himself with is definitely a very commanding and noble one. So he kind of looks you up and down once very quickly and kind of raises an eyebrow as if to inquire, what can I help you with?
Not 100% sure. I was under the assumption this shop wasn't really for me until venturing down here at the gesture from the gentleman upstairs.
Okay, and as you're speaking, he very calmly turns and begins walking over towards one of these kind of apparatus you see set up, and begins making some very, minuscule kind of adjustments and fiddling with some of the machinery in just a very familiar way to you, just somebody absent-mindedly getting back to their kind of work. He says over his shoulder, after you say this, he says, "Are you looking for something rare, by chance?"
Still trying to figure out exactly what I am looking for, but rare is not necessarily it, but it could be. What do you have in mind when you say rare?
He just has a deep kind of rolling chuckle for a moment, and he says, "You seem like a man in search of things to help him further his own knowledge, yes? Perhaps?"
I am a man with many questions who ends up winding up with very few answers and a plethora more of questions. So yes, that would be almost an understatement. I am a man with many, many questions, yes.
Okay, he says, "I've been told to expect somebody looking for a nanoforge. Would that be you?"
I don't know how you would know someone was randomly looking for a nanoforge. I'm sure there are.
He turns
Several,
back over
many.
his shoulder, and you see just an incredibly white, pearly smile stretch across his face, like a cat that's just caught a bird. And it definitely gives you a bit of pause as he does this. But as the smile creeps across his face, you see a kind of wild flash in his eye. And this almost, in this moment, it betrays this kind of almost gleeful malice that was definitely not there in his kind of stoic facade a moment ago. But in this moment of this smile and this gleam in his eye, you feel like he definitely has some knowledge about your situation that makes you uncomfortable.
Not nervously, but I mean, because of nerves, I'll simply say, I'm truly sorry for my rudeness. I never introduced myself. My name is Ren, and you?
He looks at you. He turns around and looks at you for just a beat, and then steps forward very, briskly, and extends his hand in a very formal kind of handshake. And he says, "Where are my manners?" He says, "I am Khan, Barbados Khan." And with this, he kind of gives you just a little kind of shallow bow as he reaches out to shake your hand.
Is that like Khan or?
Yes.
I will semi-hesitantly reach out and shake his hand.
Okay, as you do so, he just simply shakes your hand and takes a step back. He once again kind of inspects you up and down, and he says,
While he shakes my hand, do I notice any change of expression or anything, since my hands aren't regular hands?
Not at all. Not at all. He takes a step back and looks at you, takes in a deep breath, and then kind of lets it out in a kind of puff of air, and folds his hands in front of him, and puts one hand up on his chin. And as he does so, he's kind of looking at you quizzically like this, and then he says, "To work then, I suppose." He says, "Enough of my fun." He says, "I was told to facilitate your purchase by a mutual acquaintance of ours." He says, "I believe you know the formula, yes?" And with this, he gets that same kind of gleam in his eye.
Would this mutual acquaintance be?
And at this, he barks out a laugh. He says, "I believe you just met her recently, yes? She has taken an interest in you and wishes for you to receive help."
Am I gathering this is the being I talked to, not actually
Absolutely.
Cipher? Okay. Yes, there are some shared interests, yes.
Okay, and with this, he nods and he says, "Very well." He says, "As I'm sure you can guess, something of such value cannot be given for free." He says, "Even to an associate." He says, "And so you will be given a task from the merchant." He says, "As soon as the task is complete, the forge is yours, and you may proceed on your journey to knowledge. This is acceptable, yes?" And with this, you hear a strange kind of ringing, almost like coins clanging together, a little bit like wind chimes, but it comes from very far away and becomes close within just a few seconds. And the effect of that is a little unnerving. As this happens, you instinctively turn your head to the left, to a kind of unoccupied corner of this room. And as you look, you see that this being is now standing there amongst the two of you. It gazes at you completely stoically, no movement, no motion, and just appears to have entered the room just to basically make its presence felt. Okay, and at this, Barbados nods to him and says, "The merchant will decide a task, and it will be presented to you tonight by a representative, no later than midnight." He says, "Do not worry, we will find you. When the task is given, you may reject or accept." He says, "But this will be the only offer made." He says, "Do you understand these terms?"
Yes.
Okay, he nods and he says, "Very well. You have accepted," and he turns towards the merchant and he says in a very clear and respectful voice, "Merchant of brass, do you accept?" And at this, the merchant, from within its kind of cloak, it holds up in a show of acceptance a small portable version of this nano forge that almost looks like about the size of a large kind of personal ice chest. All right, and he nods and then quickly steps back and appears to fade into just shadow and darkness. you would guess using some variation of the Shadow Walk spells. So, all right. At this, we're. I'm gonna let you have an opportunity. Is there anything you want to discuss or do to interact with this individual now, or look around, or anything like that?
With Khan or this merchant,
With
this
Khan.
brass merchant?
Yeah, the brass merchant basically shadow stepped back out.
Okay. Yeah, because I also expected when he was talking about the merchant, I thought he was mentioning the merchant upstairs, not some creepy jingle jangle person coming out of the mist or corner. What does this? What does this task entail? I mean, I'm not positive I can do it or will necessarily do it for this item. I just
Okay, at this he gets
figure it
this
out.
kind of over-exaggerated kind of shrug, kind of, pantomime gesture come over him. And as he does this, he says, who can say? Now, as he's speaking, he pulls out what looks to be a long black wooden pipe with a huge curve. And at the end, there appears to be some kind of greenish crystal skull that is the bowl for the pipe. You don't see any kind of fuel source inside of it, but he puts it up to his lips and simply starts taking a couple of drags, and you see that right away the skull starts glowing a dull green, and you see a brighter greenish glow coming up out of the actual top of the bowl where, flame would be. As he